Hello and everybody, welcome to Chapter 26 of A Call from the Stars, A Call to Arms. Point of View. Fleet Admiral Popp, in charge of invading forces on Sniff Homeworld. Situation report from Admiral Popp of the Earth Invasion Fleet. For those listening, I hope you mind my unprofessionalism as we are still in the middle of a global fight and I just don't have time to stand on ceremony. As the situation stands, when we first jumped into the system, we were well outside of weapons range, but we still found that we were outnumbered 17 to 1. For most of our crews, this was not an issue because we believed that we not only outranged them, but were much more accurate. Now, this may be true to a point, which I will explain now. Once we got close to our weapons range, our sensors picked up that the enemy had started to redesign their ships with more bow-mounted cannons, similar to our destroyers with their particle weapons, and the projectile weapons were still non-existent from the enemy. That being said, they were still out of range of our projectile weapons, meaning that they would be able to dodge our projectile weapons before they reached them, as at that range it would take about 50 seconds for them to reach their target, more than enough time to move something the size of a destroyer out of the way. As we approached, we realized that the enemy was bringing more and more of their ships into the fight. They were jumping in on the other side of the planet, and at full burn, at least if you called that full burn, were heading straight towards their own battle lines. They were not coming to engage us. We had hoped originally that they would have been so desperate that they would have ran at us piecemeal in a disorganized group. However, these seemed to be their elite of the elite. They held position and they waited for us to get much, much closer. When we were about 30 seconds out, I commanded them to charge up the railguns and particle weapons. However, that is when the enemy fleet began to fire. We believed that we had currently had them outranged. However, this was not true. Their new ships were able to engage ours at this range. Without hesitation, I gave the command for all ships to open fire and for all corvettes to be ready to drop immediately. It was sure chaos within the ships, as our drop crews were not ready at the time, and as the ship constantly was shook from the recoil of fire of not only our missiles, our torpedoes, our railguns, coil guns, and point defense systems. It was knocking many of our drop soldiers off their feet. However, we could not wait. If the enemy got any closer, they'd be able to broadside the corvettes before they even detached. What makes this even worse is the fact that the enemy can cool their ships a whole lot faster and far more efficient than we can. Our particle laser destroyers have approximately 2 shots before they must stop to cool off, or else they risk blowing their reactor. The enemy can apparently fire anywhere from 4 to 6 shots before they have to cool down. This left us at a severe disadvantage when it came to energy weapons at nose-to-nose combat. Well, since we were muzzle to muzzle, we had hoped that our corvettes, our dropships, could get through. The corvettes were immediately detached as soon as they were ready and streamed towards the planet. While this was happening, we sent every single drone we had to cover their advance. This left us with severe losses in drones, many of which didn't even have a chance to fire their ordnance before they were shot down. Those that did were surprisingly able to cause severe damage to enemy ships before being hit. It is to be noted that once the drones drop their missiles, they have approximately 8 seconds to get one solid hit out of their energy weapon and then get out of the range of the enemy point defense weapons. If they do not, they will be shredded. The drones may be programmed for all this, however, the enemy gunners, whichever system they're using, have gotten much, much better. When reanalyzing these numbers, we found that the drone only has about 4 seconds. This is not a lot of time to get that much range. However, it was enough to get enough of the fire away from our corvettes so that they could drop our pods. Once the pods were dropped, the corvettes were told to flank around the side and burn as much fuel as they needed before they could get back. We needed the corvettes so we could drop the next load of troopers. However, we found that this was going to delay the second drop by at least an hour. That's an hour on the ground, and we could already see that they were getting hammered pretty hard. That being said, our drones and our inter-air atmospheric fighters were starting to take care of them. Thankfully, the new corvettes were able to launch the atmospheric fighters before they had to leave. That being said, our losses on corvettes topped over 28%. That is to include those that made it back but will need extensive repairs or refits before they can be used. The second wave was that of dropships. We sent the dropships right behind our corvettes to try and get heavier weapons on the ground. However, they caught much more resistance on the way down. Our losses of dropships have gone over 50%, many of which could not take off after landing, as the enemy has learned to target the engines and or the cockpit to take them out. This is to be noted for future operations. However, we did get enough personnel and equipment on the ground. It is to be noted that the troopers on the ground suffered approximately 80% casualties, with a rough estimate as of now of 31% KIA before we were able to get reinforcements onto the ground. However, it is to be noted that once the communications came of requesting reinforcements on the ground, against orders, our medical corps has actually launched through the line to get their dropships onto the ground as soon as possible. It is also to be noted that they are not to be reprimanded for this, as they saved a lot of lives down there. However, seeing this, it doubled our efforts, and our gunnery crews actually began melting down some of our railguns as they did not allow them time to cool in order to take down as many enemy destroyers and frigates as possible. That being said, it is also to be noted that we are standing on approximately 80% of our ships damaged. Out of our entire invasion fleet, we're looking at over 20% is potentially non-functional. However, it is also to be noted that we have taken one half of the planet. The reason I state that we have only taken one half of the planet, as our timeline states that we should be complete at this point, is the fact that the enemy fleet decided to pull back on the other side of the planet. We are unable to take that other side of the planet without totally abandoning our people on the ground. The enemy has used the planet as a natural bunker, which means once we break the horizon, we are within range of their energy weapons, and they would give us a full broadside. As it stands now, neither fleet has the ability to push forward, but neither fleet is dumb enough to try it, as if they come over, they will be taken apart by our weapon systems. However, they do not realize that many of our weapon systems are now non-functional. Because of this, and because of some of the items that have found on the ground, see Addendum C for that description. I do not want to go into more detail, as I actually read it once and it nauseated the hell out of me. It is also to be noted that in Addendum J, we require more ships to get the slaves now freely liberated back to their home systems. Unfortunately, many of the slaves were not captured in one piece. Many of them require extensive medical assistance before we can do anything. I am now requesting additional personnel from the 2nd, 5th, 6th, and 9th fleets to be redeployed so that we can continue this assault. Again, we have only taken 48% of the planet, and as the situation dictates, our troopers on the ground are unable to move forward without additional support. Though they insist on moving forward as they have seen what the enemy has done to those they have enslaved, they said, and I quote, "We're taking this planet if I have to do it with my bare fucking hands." It is now again my request that the other fleets be redeployed immediately so that we can end this conflict. This is Fleet Admiral Popp signing off.